Mr. Ashraf, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
First things first, the meeting is underway, sir, as we, begin this conversation. How do you see this?
Well, I think it's a very welcome development between India and China. I mean, we are two neighbors. China is a major power. India is emerging as another major power. And we have had a long history of disputes, conflicts, mistrust, geopolitical, regional and bilateral differences. So it's particularly important for countries then to remain engaged. Without engagement, you don't solve the problems. You're actually worse off. And I don't think that we should overemphasize the context, the present context of what President Trump is doing geopolitically, but also with regard to India. I think if you go back to 2014, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi came to power, 2014 and 2015, and when I was then in the Prime Minister's office, as I was before, there was actually a genuine effort to try and stabilize the relationship, expand areas of cooperation. There have been ups and downs, there have been serious issues, but I don't think there has ever been a loss of sight of that we must find opportunities to engage, to stabilize the relationship and to expand areas of opportunity. Particularly, it's very important as India seeks to pursue its 2047 vision, which requires both a high level of economic transformation, but also a very stable and peaceful periphery. And for this reason, I think this process is very important, and much more than the fact that we get into the specifics of issues like the boundary question or water or trade, is to discuss at length, and not just during this summit, how do we rebuild trust? How do we see whether our visions are aligned? Do we see each other's rise as fundamentally threatening to each other, or something that can reinforce each other's positions? Our geopolitical goals can have some degree of convergence, and all of this needs to be pursued not as an either-or situation. We should not, and I want to emphasize this, that there has been a degree of circular causality in our tensions, and this is because at one level, when China sees that the optics of our deepening engagement with the United States and with the Western powers, with Quad partners, then it gets a sense of anxiety. And the more we've had our tensions with China on the border and elsewhere, the more we have deepened our engagement with the West. So how do we, and irrespective of what we are going through at the moment with the United States, I mean, that's a relationship that also is got a deep roots. It has been built over 25 years across successive administrations. We've just had an excellent visit to Japan. So I think we don't have to get into this either-or situation, or see this summit, as some of the media is doing, as a sort of a summit on a rebound from a U.S. rebuff. I mean, we would be getting into another kind of a trap, as I think.
No, you're right. You're right, Ambassador Ashraf. It may be the case with, other media, but we are in no position to see this in that light. You're absolutely spot on. It should not be seen in that light. In fact, from this morning, I've been emphasizing that point, that it is not an either-or situation. But, sir, please allow me to ask you this, as someone who's worked very closely with Prime Minister Modi. You were ambassador to France, you've dealt very closely with the US, you've dealt with Washington during the Tobrador Day incident. I'll come to all of that. But Wong Yi was here before this meeting. For viewers who are watching this broadcast, what would you tell them? What is the kind of groundwork which is prepared before a summit of this time? Like when Prime Minister is going to another country to have a meeting with Xi Jinping in this case, what are the things that diplomats do or the government does to ease out tensions, or to, I hope you get the drift of what I want to ask.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. First of all, I think that the process of re-engagement began in October last year in Kazan, and I think that should not be lost sight of. Post Galwan, there has been a continuous process of dialogue, both at the military and the diplomatic level. After a period of time, we have seen some de-escalation and disengagement. And then Kazan began a process. When Foreign Minister Wang Yi came, you saw that it was also preceded by the resumption of Mansarovar Yatra, which is hugely symbolic and sentimental for India. We've also eased the visa conditions. There is a gradual process of easing that the temperature has come down. When Foreign Minister Wang Yi came to personally extend that invitation to the Prime Minister to attend the SCO, there were some very significant outcomes. And I think that I would say that those outcomes, particularly with regard to the boundary question, were the first since 2013, or even before that. So when we are talking of expert group on delimitation in the boundary question, or better management, or peace and tranquility, or these are well thought out. And remember, you've had the visit of NSA, Mr. Ajit Doval, who's also the special representative for boundary talks. You've had the visit of External Affairs Minister. And so this is a step-by-step process. When you have a summit like this, I think one is that you don't go with a sense of naive illusions about what you're going to achieve in any summit. Anyone who does that will obviously be setting up the Prime Minister or the leader for failure. So you try to work out on concrete steps that can help rebuild trust and can ease tensions between the two countries. And I think the outcomes that we had during Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit was in a way an indicator, not a settlement, an indicator that the two sides are willing to address some of the most pressing issues with regard to the peace and tranquility on the border and the long pending issue of peace and tranquility. Remember, this has been cast in the context of the 2005 agreement on political parameters and agreed principles. So this is a with a long-term view. So I think the preparation has been very sound. It has been kept not overhyped, but when Foreign Minister Wang Yi came and the decisions that were taken, it is indicative of seriousness on both sides to see if it is possible to address these issues. Now, very often we've had that in the past, that we've had moments of great optimism and hope in the relationship. 2014 Ahmedabad, 2015 Xi'an, Shanghai and Beijing, and before that during Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh's time with the Wen Jiabao, Hu Jintao regime, we've had some very good moments of positive, but sometimes then we end up in a situation where there are conflicts either on the border, or we have some sort of a geopolitical difference, or we see that China is trying to prevent India's rise, or cooperation with Pakistan, inroads into other neighboring countries. We have to not respond in a yo-yo fashion. We've got to keep the patience and the lines of communications open. Patience, without any sense of illusion, is the best way to move forward. China plays a very long game. We, of course, are driven by democratic cycles, but we also see a great deal of continuity, if I may say so, in the broad directions of foreign policy with regard to China. And therefore, I think we should also maintain that sense of patience, sense of stability, and the capacity to absorb the occasional shocks in the relationship to keep the dialogue process forward. India's rise, I think, is predicated fundamentally on finding solutions to its problems in the neighborhood and creating an environment of a peaceful, stable, and a predictable periphery that allows us to focus more closely on the economic transformation and on engagements with the rest of the world.
Ambassador Ashraf, you've said it so well. I have a few more questions. Sanjoy Chaudhary is here with me. I see his hand going up. Dr. Ranganathan wants to have a question, if you allow. But before that, sir, let's quickly play out what Prime Minister Modi said in his opening remarks. Here's that bit.
Excellency, हमारे प्यारे दोस्तों मेरे स्वागत के लिए मैं आपका हृदय से आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ। पिछले वर्ष कल्याण में हमारी बहुत ही सार्थक चर्चा हुई। हमारे संबंधों को एक सकारात्मक दिशा मिली। सीमा पर डिसएंगेजमेंट के बाद शांति और स्थिरता का माहौल बना हुआ है। हमारे स्पेशल रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स के बीच बॉर्डर मैनेजमेंट के संबंध में सहमति बनी। कैलाश मानसरोवर यात्रा फिर से शुरू हुई। दोनों देशों के बीच डायरेक्ट फ्लाइट भी फिर से शुरू की जा रही है। हमारे सहयोग से दोनों देशों के 2.8 बिलियन लोगों के बीच जुड़े हुए हैं। इससे पूरी मानवता के कल्याण का मार्ग भी प्रशस्त होगा। परस्पर विश्वास, सम्मान और संवेदनशीलता के आधार पर हम अपने संबंधों को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए प्रतिबद्ध है। एजेंसी चीन द्वारा एससीओ की सफल अध्यक्षता के लिए मैं आपको बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं। एक बार फिर चीन यात्रा के निमंत्रण के लिए और आज की हमारी बैठक के लिए आपका हार्दिक धन्यवाद।
That was the opening remark by Prime Minister Modi. Ambassador Ashraf, you get to choose who asked you that next question. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, Singh Chaudhary.
Anyone is fine.
Okay. Dr. Ranganathan.
I've known for a very long time. So.
No, it's a real pleasure and an honor to be listening to Ambassador Ashraf, and he's made some brilliant points. And of course, Rinja will ask him more pertinent questions. But I just wanted to ask a couple of things. I think,
yes.
Sorry, I'm anything but a diplomat, so please pardon my language if it is construed as undiplomatic. But I think going forward, of course, I don't expect a lot to change, between India and China as far as especially the border question is concerned. It hasn't changed for 60 years. 800 kilometers of LAC is undefined, and I don't think both countries have it right now in them to address those issues. The pertinent question remains Trump. But I just want to ask this question. Don't you think, especially because the most important, I would say, international organization that India is currently a member of is, I would say, BRICS. So BRICS would be an excellent counter leverage to what Trump and his allies are doing, especially vis-a-vis EU. Does he believe that it was actually a mistake to join the SCO, given that to find democracies in SCO right now is like finding a needle in a haystack, given that Pakistan also is a member of this thing? So I don't know what we were thinking, but I think we should possibly concentrate less on the SCO, more on India-China bilateral, as well as much more on BRICS. What are his views on that?
Okay, now it's an excellent question. Today the world has moved into such a state of flux that there are no fixed alliances, that there are no neat divisions, etc. Every country is trying to participate in as many forums, ad hoc groupings, secretariat-based organization, or just a meeting place, in order to be able to both assess what's going on and to be able to influence choices. If I look at, so we don't get into these either-or situations. Now, if you look at SCO, first of all, I think that, the notion of values as a binding force in international relations is highly overstated. That's good for public speeches and statements in parliaments, etc. But even if you look at the architect of the so-called international liberal order, the United States, I mean, some of its strongest allies and friends have been the, dictators, because they are able to do their bidding. They constantly look for compliant rogues. One of them is on our Western neighbor, as you know very well. So, so leave that aside. Now, if you look at SCO, it involves countries that are the entire Eurasian landmass. And now they are extending putting their footprints into the maritime domain. So you've got Maldives coming in as observers. You've got 7 Southeast Asian countries coming in as observers. You've got Egypt and Turkey. So if you look at where SCO is going, our presence there, we are not saying that SCO will eventually be the great driver of a cooperative future of the Eurasian landmass. But your presence there is essential to have your point of view in an organization that involves all the members in your immediate and extended neighborhood. So I think that's very important, to be there, to have your voice heard, particularly on issues that matter the most to us, which is terrorism, extremism and radicalism. You won't have solutions there, but your absence there also means that others will be able to direct the agenda. That's one part of it. The second, you mentioned about BRICS. I think that, BRICS, regardless of what the West thinks of it, is today becoming the most attractive institutions, evoking the greatest level of interest globally. In part because there is always that desire for resistance against hegemony anywhere in the world. It's almost like law of physics. You need countervailing power against arbitrary hegemonic power exercised by others. So if you see, in fact, President Emmanuel Macron said that 2 years ago in a speech to his heads of mission, that, and it's very eloquently put, he says we need to ask ourselves, why are so many countries queuing up to join BRICS and no one is knocking on our doors? So if you see the institutions that are actually drawing more people today, are institutions that have come up more recently and are, if I may say so, in a arbitrary dichotomy, Western institutions. And by the way, the only Western institution that saw an expansion was G20, with Africa Union coming in, and that had to happen during India's presidency of the G20. And it is, believe me, wasn't easy. It was because, we as chair pressed that point. We had other members also bringing them in. So I think that you are seeing these as reflections of once in an era global shifts that are taking place. And this is actually being accelerated, precipitated by some of the steps that President Trump is taking. And reflect on this, even as we abstract from the pain that we are going through with regard to the economic consequences. Look at the isolation today of the United States. It is also, after blaming us for laundering Russian war machine, it's now blaming Europe, saying that because of you, this war is getting extended. In other words, what the United States is saying is, forget about the rules and laws. Respect power, and you better accept whatever President Putin is asking you to. Now, that does not augur well, whatever be the wisdom of that. It doesn't augur well for your transatlantic relationship either. So I think that we, as India, where we are at the crossroads of the world, really, and I think we need to constantly recognize where we are geopolitically when we abstract from a Western lens of looking at the geopolitical geography. We need to be present, engaged with all the major players, and I think that sometimes we overemphasize one to the exclusion of the other, or to the neglect of the other, and that perhaps is also a self-correcting mechanism that has been kicked in today. So yes, you're right. That question you raised about BRICS and about CO is extremely, extremely valid.
Ambassador Ashraf, the 55-minute bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping is now over. 40 minutes were set aside and clearly went beyond it. Now there will be a joint statement. And talking of joint statements, the joint statement that India had with Japan was very strongly worded. It talked of a rules-based order. And this is just before Prime Minister comes to China. So your thoughts on that?
First of all, I'd like to caution on the use of the phrase rules-based order. That's a very Western concept. We in India should speak about international law-based order. Laws are made by countries working in their sovereign capacities. Rules are framed by those who wield power at a point of time. And I think that we have, in a sense, internalized this Western vocabulary of rules-based order, which is, so we need to speak about international law. And I think that there is no question. Look, India, I mean, the thing about today's foreign policy is that we have to speak on the merits of each issue. It isn't, so we don't have to tone down what we are doing with Japan in order to, because we are going to China next. And that's not the way the Prime Minister sees these things anyway. So I would say that you get respect globally when you stand for your views and values. Great powers respect you when they see. They may not like you or they may not think you are useful to them, but they will know that you have to be respected if you are able to stand for your values and for your principles. And that has been the history of India. We were alone on CTBT. We were alone on NPT. We have stood alone on WTO. We walked out of RCEP because it did not suit our interests. We can, as a country, don't have to have that complex about, ourselves. So if we speak with clarity on the foundations of our principles, and remember, we have always been transparent. How is it that a country like India could deal with Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Iran on equal footing at the same time? There has to be a basis for it. It is because we don't play games of one against the other that everybody knows, even if they don't accept it. So we are not playing Russia's games or Ukraine's game. We are speaking for peace. And so therefore the United States should understand that very clearly. So same thing is, we speak with clarity, we speak with consistency, and we speak on the basis of principles and in a spirit of transparency. And we need to continue doing that. Sometimes that is what deals result in the long run. The transformation of our relationship with the United States, and I've been involved in it from 99 to well past 2010-12, as Sri Envoy will tell you, was based on a very clear recognition of our red lines and of our understanding of what our interests are. Countries do come down. We have a unique president and a unique administration that is perhaps should be of greater concern to Americans and to their allies than to us, because we do actually have a lot more options than they think. So I think that, we should not get into this balancing issue about language and things. But I wanted to use this forum to emphasize that we should avoid internalizing that vocabulary of rules-based order.
Point taken, Ambassador. I promise you that it will henceforth be international law-based order and not rules. I'm not going to use that phrase. Even Dr. Ranganathan acknowledges that point. With your permission, sir, I want to bring in Swati Joshi quickly, our colleague in Tianjin. Swati, the meeting is just concluded. It went on for 55 minutes.
Yes, absolutely, Pranesh. And you were earlier asking me, is this a meeting that can go beyond 40 minutes? You've got your answer now. Depends on the issues that were discussed. And as far as the exact details of what transpired during the bilateral is concerned, till we get an official statement from the MEA, it's a guesswork, but yes, we have pretty much a fair idea of what must have been discussed, because in the opening remarks the Prime Minister thanked China, the Prime Minister congratulated China for the presidency. The Prime Minister then spoke about the border issues. He said, after the special representatives talk that happened, which is when the Foreign Minister of China came to India, there is peace and tranquility at the border. But the most important message that the Prime Minister gave out, according to me, is that, when he said that our relationship will now advance based on mutual sensitivities and mutual interest and trust. That is something that the Foreign Minister also spoke about. So the Prime Minister, they're emphasizing on that. The Prime Minister spoke about the measures that have been taken by both India and China to normalize relationship, the resumption of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, which signifies the kind of people-to-people connect and the efforts that are being taken to ensure that that is bolstered. Now, the Prime Minister also spoke about the development that has happened in terms of talks between both the nations after both the leaders spoke in Kazan. So pretty much that was discussed during the Foreign Minister of China's visit to India, was outlined by the Prime Minister in the opening remarks. Remains to be seen what is mentioned in a statement and the official information that comes from the MEA.
You don't have to hazard a guess when you have someone of the caliber of Ambassador Javed Ashraf with you. So, Ambassador, what do you think could have transpired? Like you said in your earlier remark that this was a build-up to the groundwork which was laid out. Step by step is the phrase that you used.
I think, first of all, again, if we overhype what could be dramatic outcomes, then we are setting up ourselves for failure. Very good that the two leaders met in a spirit of positive environment, in a desire to advance the relationship, address some of the challenges. They've had a 55-minute meeting. Remember that this is a meeting on the margins of a sort of SCO meeting, so they tend to be shorter. I would say that I've seen meetings between our Prime Minister and President Xi that have lasted 1.5 to 2 hours. Remember, there's also the interpretation issue that comes in that takes up some bit of time. So I think this is, and they may also be meeting again. They may have a second meeting while they are there. So the tone that the Prime Minister was conveying, and this is exactly the how President Xi would have reciprocated, is that we must start the process of engaging, taking into account mutual sensitivity and the spirit of trust. And we would have outlined some of the broad agenda items of the bilateral relationship. For example, we need to maintain peace and tranquility. We've agreed on certain mechanisms. Let's get them started and let them get working very soon. Both leaders must give clear instructions to the people. We must tell our military, we must tell our diplomats how they must proceed forward. That's one part of it. Second, we must see how we can, ensure that there is no miscommunication or misadventures or accidental conflicts on the border in the boundary region. Third, they would have talked about, floods, water, improving trade, manufacturing. All of these wide gambit would have appreciated the resumption of Mansarovar Yatra. You see, I'm emphasizing Mansarovar Yatra for a very important reason. It touches at the core of the spiritual heritage of India and of people here. And why is that important? Because India and China are neighbors. Indians and Chinese are strangers. How many Chinese people do we know, and how many Chinese people know Indians? And when I was in Singapore, posted there, I used to attend the Chinese New Year. I could have been attending Diwali. They had Dhanteras kind of an event. They had the same, Feng Shui, which translates into similar things for, you can think of so many different ways. But where is it's a very important thing for, when we say Vastu, they also are very, very particular about it. Now, I'm not saying these are issues that can build relationship, but there is a need for greater people-to-people engagement, business-to-business ties, student-to-student ties. If people are strangers to each other, it's much more difficult at political level to build relationships and to address challenges. Border issues are not going to be resolved, as Anand was very, very rightly saying. We've had this for 60 years. Can you set that aside and try to build relationships as long as you maintain peace and tranquility? Remember, civilizationally, there used to be monks moving from Vadnagar to Xi'an and back over the Hindu Kush mountain. Think of those inhospitable heights. But there was this continuous intellectual, religious, spiritual communication that was taking place. It is the colonial era which brought in the idea of this fixity of lines at 5,000 meters, 5,500 meters. So, yes, they have become important elements of our political geography and they're immutable. But can we say that, okay, both sides, and it's equally important for China to recognize our sensitivity, and also with regards to, their cooperation with Pakistan, that's been going on for decades. And a degree of sensitivity has to be introduced, but I would also like to say that with the United States, we have not also held the same standards. In 2000s, when they were working in Afghanistan, they were actually trying to resist our opening the consulates there. But China also has to recognize that there must be a limit on that cooperation in a way that does not seriously undermine our interests. So I think that some of those, when PM talks about sensitivities, he's talking about those kinds of issues. That in our neighborhood, where India's core interests are involved, China needs to show a high level of sensitivity. I would also say in the context of climate change, hydrological cooperation is extremely important. It means a lot to the lives and the future of actually the entire belt of North India, stretching from Arunachal all the way to Punjab, because almost all the rivers have some source coming out of that. So all of these issues Prime Minister would have put forth. They are not new. It's a question of how you see the world and how you see your relationship in that context, and what is the level of energy and positivity you bring into trying to address those.
Now, Ambassador Ashraf, I have actually three actually, but Sanjoy wants to come in, and because Sanjoy has had the opportunity to interact with you closely, so I will ask Sanjoy Chaudhary to wait for his turn. And here's my question to you, sir. You worked with Dr. Manmohan Singh. You worked very closely with Prime Minister Modi. For viewers who are watching this broadcast, how would you, define the leadership style?
Don't draw me into this sort of comparisons, please. I mean, that is something that I would not do. We are, civil servants who serve equal time with both. I've also resisted the temptation to put personal experiences of working with the two leaders into some sort of a book, for which you can imagine there would be a lot of pressure. But I would say this, that I'm always reassured by the level of continuity sometimes that our democracy throws up. There is politics, but there is governance issues also. And my personal experience has been that, there has been, and by the way, I mean, this is, if you analyze the course of, say, any of our relationships, important ones, sometimes also for economic policies, I mean, they are very different personalities, obviously, no question about it. I mean, Burns, came up to the prime ministership in a very different stream. Prime Minister Modi has come up in a different stream. But I think that as far as our larger national interests are concerned, in the way they have worked on the foreign policy issues is remarkable. And I think that very few people don't usually recognize how much prime ministers pay attention to India's foreign policy, India's external engagement, both for our economic transformation, but also for our national security. So I would say that it's very, very difficult for me to get into a discussion on a subject of this nature.
Okay, maybe that's for some other day, but Sanjoy?
Excellency, there are three little points, and I hope you'll be able to help us with these. First of all, you mentioned Wen Jiabao, and Wen Jiabao, I think, was Prime Minister or Premier for about 10 years. And for a long while, he was seen as a friend we had in the highest levels of the Chinese government. Now, how necessary is that? And did that relationship, that friendship he had, did that help in bringing the two countries closer? Because you used the word strangers just a while ago. Secondly, you've briefed Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, you briefed Prime Minister Modi. I don't want anything else, but when you brief people, and you know Prime Minister, you know the National Security Advisor, say before this meeting, what kind of deliberations happen, and what are the issues that are sort of focused upon? Thirdly, we know what happened in Kazan, and then about 4 months ago, the Chinese moved back a very significant portion of their military from the line of actual control, whether it's infantry, whether it was tanks, whether it's artillery, and so on, further back. Of course, a very large amount remains. Keeping that in mind, how do you see the future vis-a-vis the situation on the LAC, particularly considering that this meeting has happened? And this meeting would have happened after fair amount of deliberations between Wang Yi and Ajit Doval and Wang Yi and Mr. Jaishankar.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let me start with the third one. First, let me make a general point, and I think it is very important for us to understand this, that in a world which is in such a state of flux and where, the future looks uncertain, you have to prepare your strategy as a capability-driven strategy, not a threat-driven strategy, which means that you build your economy and you build your military capabilities in a way that you are able to deal with any range of contingencies. Right. So which is where I think Prime Minister's emphasis on Atmanirbharta needs to be really understood. Because if you are reliant on external powers for your defense needs, today's friends can turn indifferent or a foe later. So I think this is also, strength is a great currency to engage the world with. And the more you are able to transform this, and I think what you are seeing is Prime Minister, both during COVID and under this crisis, has used this as an opportunity to press for more reforms, to press for Atmanirbharta, to press for accelerating our development. Now, this is very important for as a general proposition, because this will also be necessary in our engagement with China. When you speak as two mature adults, they will also make an assessment of your strength, of your capabilities, of your resolve, of your will, and you will do the same thing. So it isn't like you discard all your skepticism, you set aside your perspectives or your experiences, and you say, look, enter into this in a naive way. And I think that this would have been a very hard-nosed, very, very carefully thought out process over the past 2 years, not just now, of continuous evaluation of what their intentions are, what our intentions are. And regardless of what is happening with the United States, Prime Minister would not have jumped into this without adequate preparation with regard to two things. One is their willingness to engage with us in a spirit of trust and mutual respect for mutual sensitivities, and two, with the interest of keeping tranquility, peace and tranquility on the border. The presence of troops is one thing. We have also, as if you're sitting in Chepzi on the other side, you or opposite Barahoti or on Arunachal, you would also look at the rapid transformation of India's border infrastructure. Don't think we have not raised our game. Our patrolling, our lift capacity, our ability to mobilize, in this inhospitable heights, all that has changed also. So they also have to see, in the context of their global ambitions, they have a front on the Pacific side. Should they have a major front on the southern and the eastern side, that would also, in a sense, distract them from what they consider to be their preeminent challenge. And as India grows with 18%, contributing 18-20% to the global growth, as they face an increasingly hostile U.S. market, would they need a country or a market which has the future for growth? Because domestic consumption can do so much for you in terms of fueling your economy. You do need markets outside, and that's also something that we are focusing on now. So I think there would have also been thoughts. So I'd say that after all that has happened over the past 10 years, there would have been a hard-nosed evaluation based on intelligence and previous conversations in making this possible, and not setting ourselves up to look like some, naive and innocent people getting into a discussion because there is a problem on some other front.
Yeah, some breaking inputs, that we are tracking this minute. This is what the Chinese president said in his opening remarks, and I'm reading from what we've been given. It is a great pleasure to meet you again, Mr. Prime Minister. I welcome you to China for the SCO summit. Last year, we had a successful meeting in Kazan. So President Xi Jinping underlining that Kazan interaction, something that Ambassador Ashraf was also referring to. He then says the world is going towards transformation. China and India are two of the most civilizational countries. We are the world's two most populous countries and part of the global south. It is vital to be friends, a good neighbor, and the dragon and the elephant to come together. So on that note, I thank Ambassador Ashraf for indulging us and for, saying what he did, for putting things in context in the right spirit. I don't think Dr. Ranganathan has had any TV show without raising his hand. He was listening to you intently. He has his hand up again. Okay, yes, sir. 30 seconds.
Yeah. I object to Ambassador Ashraf saying that he's not going to write his memoirs. I think after the accidental Prime Minister, the next memoir that will be up on everybody's list would be his. So please don't stop there.
Okay, I'll take that point. Thank you very much.
Okay. Ambassador Ashraf, pleasure having you, sir. Thank you for your time. Srinjoy Chaudhary, Dr. Ranganathan, thank you for joining us. Viewers, stay with Times Now as we continue to get you the latest from Tianjin in China.